All right, well, y'all asked for it, and much to my chagrin, I decided to oblige. Kansas City is back here again for the 7th time this season. I did get some useful suggestions, so big thanks to everybody who helped out. Surprisingly, though, I actually managed to find a drink for Kansas City on my own. Found one that I haven't used before, the Arrowhead Limited. Now, as you may have guessed from the name, this drink isn't a drink that was originally created for the Chiefs. This drink actually comes to us courtesy of a Brooklyn bar and was named after a train that ran between Wisconsin and Minnesota in the 1970s. But, I mean, come on, it's got Arrowhead in the name, that's good enough. The drink itself is a beer cocktail, and a very interesting one at that. It's essentially like, okay, what if we took a Mezcal Negroni and turned it into a highball? The drink consists of a base of, predictably enough, Mezcal, Campari, and Carpano Antica Vermouth, which is then topped off with an IPA. So it's certainly quite a bitter and smoky drink, which feels appropriate for the Chiefs as well, considering their fans are likely bitter at watching their playoff hopes go up in smoke. Fittingly, Denver's drink is far sweeter, it's the Avalanche. As you can see, I'm cheating just a little bit here by using Denver's hockey team as the link to their cocktail, but I mean, hey, it worked out when I did it for Seattle. Now, there's a lot of different Avalanche recipes out there. The one I'm using you can find on Difford's Guide, which uses a whopping 2 ounces of banana liqueur as a base, and then builds around it with Amaretto, creme de cacao, half and half, whole milk, and a secret non-liquid ingredient, half a banana. The purpose of the banana is to help thicken and bind the drink, since all of those ingredients are then blended with about 12 ounces of ice to create something somewhere between a boozy milkshake and a boozy smoothie. So I decided to keep this a blender drink because I think a dessert drink just feels so appropriate for a Christmas game. I'm realizing now I probably should have gotten like a Christmas hat for filming this video. This was also one of the drinks where the main question wasn't which bottles should I include, it was which bottles should I exclude. I think you can make a case to include basically every bottle from our 2 representatives in this drink, but what I ultimately settled on is a final spec of 1 ounce of Mezcal. Now, I'm actually going to be making this as a double, so I'm going to be doubling all of the ingredients that I'm saying here, just because my blender is so big that it might be a little bit difficult for me to make this as a single one, but the recipe only makes a single, so follow that if you want 1. If you want 2, just go ahead and double it. You know, if you've got a big blender, I would recommend doing that. That's what I did with the last blender drink we did. 2 ounces of banana liqueur. So again, because I am making a double, just to fill up my blender and make sure that everything sort of gets incorporated, I'm going to be doing a double. And also because that means I have an excuse to use up more of this banana liqueur. Actually, I probably didn't even need to double this. I probably could have just gone with a single. Oh well. Lessons learned. Half an ounce of Amaretto with its fuck-ass fake cap on it. But yeah, my main thought process here is really that, you know, the Mezcal is going to give us some interesting kind of smoke and like funk up the Avalanche in a really interesting way. That's kind of what I'm hoping for here. So we'll see if that pans out. One ounce of half and half. So this is one of the ones where it's, you know, we've got half and half and whole milk. So you can kind of alter this based on how you want, but yeah, just make sure you're sort of getting enough fat in there, right? If you just use whole milk, it'll be too thin. If you use purely like heavy cream, you'd likely get a bit too thick of a final product, but you can kind of tailor that to your liking. 1 ounce of whole milk. So this is our sort of milk blend that we've got going on right here. If I had a nickel for every milk-based cocktail I did in these last 2 weeks, I have 2 nickels. It isn't a lot, but it's weird that I did 2 of them. Then our secret ingredient, half of a banana. It's a frozen banana that I've got here. So it should help add some thickness and creaminess to our drink. All right, then I'm gonna go add some ice, blend this up, and I will be right back. All right, and now we've got this blended all up. And since this is a blender drink, you can serve it in basically any glass you want. The most traditional would be to just serve it up in a highball with like a straw, but I've got these massive martini glasses, and I haven't had an opportunity to use them in pretty much any cocktail recently because they're so large, but I think that makes them perfect for this kind of frozen dessert drink. So I'm going to serve mine in there. Lovely little texture. Look at that. Now that's a holiday drink right there if I've ever seen one. All right, so Chiefs versus Broncos, 2 outdoor stadiums. Playing in December now, so this is our snowy stadium. Let's give it a try. Woo! Okay. It's certainly a strong drink. It's certainly, you know, the booze is quite forward in it. It's making its presence known. Not in a particularly harsh or off-putting way, but it is certainly like if you were hoping for this to be a drink where you can just kind of like hide a bunch of alcohol in it and people won't really pick up on it, that's not what this is. Between the banana and the mezcal, those are 2 very strong flavors that are certainly punching through all of this sort of ice and heavy cream and dairy, you know, that we've put in this drink. So it's certainly not subtle, but it is quite approachable, and it's quite well balanced, I would say, for what it is. I mean, perhaps before I get even deeper into the flavors, the texture is just absolutely delightful. It really is this kind of like, it's like right on that border between like a milkshake and a smoothie. Like it's not as sort of thick and heavy bodied as a milkshake, and it's obviously nowhere near as fruity as a smoothie would be, but it's sort of straddling that line where there's just enough sort of, you know, creaminess from the banana to sort of hold everything together. Like it's not, unlike a frozen margarita or something where it's kind of going to be very icy, it's going to have a sort of slush kind of texture. This one very much has a creaminess to it, which obviously the milk is helping, all of that dairy is helping it be sort of creamy, but the banana really can't be understated how much that is helping everything sort of bind together and truly sort of become this emulsion that has just such a lovely mouthfeel to it, as opposed to something that's more sort of icy, watery, you know, barely holding itself together. This drink holds together really well, and it means the drinking experience is really quite pleasant. It really does drink like a dessert. Yeah, and then if you've watched the Lions versus Vikings episode that just came out, you know my thoughts on this mezcal. It is not a particularly smoky mezcal. It's certainly far more on the sort of like fruity, agave, light and drinkable and approachable side of the spectrum. And so, again, I think a mezcal that really has some serious punch to it, some serious sort of, you know, smoky chops, I think that would be far more interesting in this drink, because as is, you get a little bit of it, but it is certainly playing a supporting role to the banana. And I think this would be a far more interesting drink if they were really sort of equals, right? The fact that this is more fruity and less smoky means that it comes across as like a twist on this main banana flavor, right? It's that very sort of, the fact that there's actual banana in here helps it not feel like an artificial banana flavor, but the mezcal certainly comes across as like, oh, it's a banana with a little bit of like smoke and some extra character to it. Whereas if I had used a really smoky mezcal, like the last bottle I had, I think those two flavors, it would be like, this is a banana and smoky drink. And by standing on the sort of same plane as equals, I think there would be a much more interesting flavor combination, because I think that smoky sort of peaty almost flavor with this sort of very heavy, creamy dairy body, I think that would be a very interesting sort of juxtaposition. I think it creates some wonderful contrast and intrigue in this drink. And I'm just not quite getting it with this mezcal. It's just not quite hitting that like really smoky punch that I want it to hit. But otherwise, I really don't have too many complaints. You know, it is, This banana liqueur, it is a little bit of that sort of Laffy Taffy type banana, but I think there's a real trade-off here, right? Like if you could use a much sort of better banana liqueur, like a Gifford's, and that would give you a more rounded, less sort of sweet and artificial banana flavor, which would be nice, but it'd also give you an overall less punchy flavor. And so it's sort of that trade-off, right? Of like, how much do you want that banana to come through, even if it isn't the highest quality banana, versus how much are you okay with that flavor sort of being washed out, but what you do get being quite nice. I think that's the sort of trade-off that you're working with here. And I don't think, like, it's already at 2 ounces. I don't think you would want to increase it any further to try to bring up the volume that way. I think that's a sort of fool's errand. The Amaretto comes through less than I expected, but I think it is because it's really just kind of here to be extra support. I think it's just there to sort of lend a bit of sweetness, lend the slightest touch of complexity, a little bit of extra booze as well. I think the Amaretto really isn't trying to stand out in this drink, which makes sense considering, the Mezcal is a very strong flavor, the banana liqueur is a very strong flavor, all the dairy is going to sort of mask any weaker flavors. And so it makes sense that the Amaretto isn't sort of trying to solo all of that. It makes sense that it's kind of resigned itself to be a supporting note. I do wish it was supporting just a little bit more though. I think it's, like maybe 3/4 of an ounce instead of half an ounce would make it sort of pop just a little bit more in this drink. Yeah, overall very happy with this, It truly is a dessert drink. It feels like a dessert, It's kind of weird drinking something this cold and desserty while it is this cold outside, but I think it kind of works. I think it's, I don't know, this feels like such a wintry drink, and, the visual certainly isn't hurting. But yeah, it's not too sweet. It's not too strong, It's just a lovely little dessert drink. All right, and with this, I am finally free of the Chiefs. Let's see if the Broncos can free us from the Chiefs in the simulation. The Broncos start with the ball and open this game with a strong return to the 38-yard line, but their momentum quickly fizzles out and the drive ends in a punt. Instead, it's the Chiefs who strike first, making it down to the 15-yard line where this pass intended for Rashee Rice sails out of the back corner of the end zone. As a result, they bring out Butker, who manages to avoid going too far right on this 32-yarder. It takes until the second quarter, but the Broncos finally manage to get their offense going, with RJ Harvey catching this quick little play-action pass for the first touchdown of the game. Both of these defenses really dominated the first half, though, with the Broncos stopping Kelsey just short of the first down near the end of the second quarter. Now, Butker is only 60% on kicks of 50-plus yards, but he manages to send this 52-yarder down Broadway, cutting Denver's lead to 1. However, with 1 minute and 3 timeouts left, the Broncos have an opportunity to respond, and after spending all day in the pocket, Bo Nix delivers by hitting Troy Franklin to put them in field goal range. Big Nuts Lutz tops Butker by making the 53-yarder to send the Broncos into halftime up 10-7. Minshew manages to put together another red zone drive to start the second half, but the Broncos pass rush gets home on 3rd and goal, sacking him back to the 16-yard line. As a result, they're forced to settle for their 3rd field goal of the game, pulling back within a point. The Chiefs' defense forces a Broncos punt, giving the offense the opportunity to finally retake the lead. However, KC remains allergic to the end zone as this 3rd down deep ball into double coverage is broken up. But with one more 44-yard field goal, they're finally able to pull ahead at the end of the 3rd quarter. After another Denver 3-and-out, the Chiefs are back in the red zone, and they finally snap their field goal streak as Minshew hits Xavier Worthy for a 9-yard touchdown to put the Chiefs up 9. Down 2 scores in the 4th quarter, the Broncos' drive takes 4.5 precious minutes off the clock, but ends with a 3-yard diving Bo Nix touchdown, keeping their hopes alive. The Broncos' defense delivers a crucial 3-and-out, which the offense repays by sprinting downfield into field goal position. With 30 seconds left, Nix hits Sutton over the middle, setting them up at the 13-yard line. With 14 seconds left, Lutz hits the 30-yarder to put the Broncos back on top. KC can't respond in time. Denver wins a nail-biter, 20-19. So this was certainly a closer game than I think most are expecting, especially considering the Chiefs are eliminated from the playoffs and missing Mahomes, while Denver is actively fighting for that first-round bye. I think a lot of that is the historical bias of Madden. The Chiefs have regressed pretty heavily this year, and Madden is still essentially giving them the benefit of the doubt. It does also speak to how narrow the Broncos' margins have been this year. They're 9-2 in one-score games, including their last game against the Chiefs, which they won 22-19. Gardner Minshew showed a little bit of that Minshew magic in this game, throwing for a very clean 302 yards without an interception, though the single touchdown speaks to their issues finishing drives. That said, he did definitely outduel Bo Nix in this game, who also only threw for 1 touchdown and about 50 fewer yards. Both of them actually showed some scramble ability as well, with Minshew averaging nearly 10 yards per attempt, and Nix scrambling in for the only rushing touchdown of the game. Now, 11 carries for 50 yards isn't a particularly impressive game for RJ Harvey, but it easily mogs Pacheco's pitiful 3 yards on 8 carries. We have to go all the way back to 2022 before we find a game this poor for Pacheco. RJ Harvey certainly benefited from a lot of screens and checkdowns in this game, as 7 receptions and 54 yards would be new single-game highs for him. Things look more normal on the Chiefs side of the ball, with the ball being spread around pretty evenly, but Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy were the clear leaders in terms of receiving yards. Down at the bottom of the stat sheet, we have a fun Denver stat as Broncos fullback Adam Prentice caught a single 5-yard pass. He's actually averaged a catch a game over the past 5 games, so this isn't as out there as most of these random one-off receptions. Gardner Minshew continues to outduel Bo Nix in the Monte Carlo sim, though his interception rate is slightly higher, which makes sense considering his performance against the Chargers. Isaiah Pacheco has a far more realistic 58 yards on the ground, while J.K. Dobbins actually gets to carry the ball a bit for the Broncos. Both of these teams spread the ball around between all their pass catchers, though Evan Ingram being the Broncos' leading receiver is certainly a bit of a surprise. The score distribution for this game leans definitely towards the defensive side, with its most common outcome being a 14-14 tie. While the distribution is quite symmetrical, it tilts ever so slightly in KC's favor, averaging out to an 18-17 Chiefs victory. Do you agree with the simulations, or do you envision a different future? I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments. As a reminder, our drink for this matchup is the Snowy Stadium, a banana-forward dessert drink with just a hint of smoked agave. If you make it, please let me know what you think, and I'd love to hear your suggestions for what drink should be your team's representative. Stay curious, stay thirsty, and I'll see you in the next one.